Good afternoon, good morning, everybody. I was trying to make sure that I will be late to that session, and I think I succeeded. Sorry about a small glitch with the computer. Okay, so I also lost my voice, too much screaming over the computer today. So welcome to the number 4 of our program, so Sanphar Biosecurity program. So today we are about 110 of us from 21 countries. So thank you for your time coming for this session. So our aim is to bring biosecurity closer to you and alive to your operation. So therefore, biosecurity reinforce and hopefully securing your business continuity. So the program, as we mentioned before, we have built a program over 9 months. So there will be 9 sessions and a short one, 30 to 40 minutes. And we kick off on January with the general aspect of biosecurity. In February, we went through the 5 principles for a good biosecurity plan. And last month, we started the external biosecurity, so purchasing, transport of animal, quarantine period, and how to dispose the carcasses, okay? And to do that, we have invited the best in class in biosecurity from the veterinary faculty of Ghent University, who has been, by the way, nominated 4 times in a row the top veterinary faculty. So we are really proud of that. So the Department of Epidemiology is led by Professor Jeroen Dewulf, who has spent 20 years in the field of prevention disease with a focus on application of biosecurity. He has also published a book on that subject and also on reduction of antibiotic usage. He is assisted, and you can see here, by Nele. So Nele Kakebeker, since 2017, has joined the group, and Nele is very involved in antimicrobial usage reduction too. And she's training the international public, and she's part of the BioCheck team program. Andy Vervat, new to the team and contributor to the development of the e-learning module. So Andy was also with us since January. And we have, of course, Dr. Plamen Nikolov, our field veteran in biosecurity from Vilofoss. So Dr. Nikolov brings more than 20 years of experience in animal health, nutrition, biosecurity, and of course, with loads of field experience. So during those sessions, Dr. Nikolov will be sharing the application and benefits of his preferred disinfectant powder called Stalosan F. So it's a great tool to support your biosecurity plan. So basically the webinar is organized with the presentation that we will run 30 minutes. And we will take your question at the end of the presentation. If you have a burning question during the presentation, there is a feature on the webinar system that allow you to capture your question. And at the end, if we don't have enough time, so we'll come back to you through the website of Soundfile with the answer. Okay, so right now the webinar number 4, so external biosecurity part 2 by Professor Jeroen Dewulf, and he will be talking about the feed, water, and surrounding of the farm. So I leave Professor Dewulf to you now.
Good morning, good afternoon from my side. So I'm Professor Jeroen Dewulf, working at Ghent University, and it's my privilege to talk to you about a component of the external biosecurity, and maybe just as a reminder, external biosecurity, those are all those measures that we are taking to prevent pathogens from introducing into your farm. And so everything you do to try to shield off the farm from the outer world and to keep the pathogens out. And today we're going to discuss a bit more about the feed, water and vermin control and everything that happens in the surroundings of the farm, and how we can really protect the farm from introduction of risks from that side. So let's kick off with the feed. And feed, of course, is indispensable. All the animals need feed. They need a lot of feed, but we have to make sure that we give them safe feed. And there's dozens of techniques to secure the quality of the feed, but also to secure the safety of the feed through heat treatment, for instance, or through decontamination, through different processes. It's more technical for the feed producers and how you can do it. But it is important whenever you buy feeds is that to make sure that you buy good feeds, good quality feeds, but also good safety of the feed. But that's not the end of the story. It's not because you have safe feed that everything is right, because also the feed is transported. And those trucks that are bringing the feed, they also have to be clean, both at the outside and at the inside. So the outside, these trucks going to different companies, to different farms, so they might transport the pathogens when driving from one farm to the other. So that's why they should be clean. And just as a reminder, we cannot, it's very difficult to disinfect something dirty. So when you want to disinfect a truck, the first thing you have to do is to wash it to make sure that the truck is clean, and then secondly you can start to disinfect it. But also at the inside of the truck, if different feed components have been in there, it's also important that the inside of the truck is clean and that you do not get like contaminated feed from other sources. And the drivers of the truck are also of importance. Those drivers, they will go out of the truck at different locations. They come to different farms. So it's important that your drivers do not get access to the animals. So that the truck drivers or the people that are bringing the feed to the farms do not get into contact with the animals, because they come on too many different farms, and they also can bring on their clothes, on their shoes, on their hands. They can bring on all types of pathogens. And then we have the storage of the feed, either in silos or in bags. Different systems are available, but when you store feed, it's also important that this feed is stored safely. And with safely, it meant that it is stored in dry conditions. And that there is also no access for other animals, because where there is feed storage, that will attract rats and mice, for instance. We'll talk about that later, but it could also attract wildlife if there is wildlife in your surroundings. And so you have to make sure that the feed is stored in a safe condition, a dry condition, and a condition where no other animals can get access. And also cross-contamination is something you have to be careful. Sometimes feeds are used with antibiotics in, for instance, and then you have to make sure that there is no cross-contamination between different types of feeds to avoid problems on that side. And then from your storage of your feed towards the end product to the animals, there is still a lot of pipelines, a lot of transport of the feed or distribution systems for where the animals can eat, and also those can get contaminated. We often get, for instance, in poultry production, we get growth of salmonella in these feeding lines. So also these pipelines should be clean, should be safer. So sometimes you really would need to clean and to disinfect also these piping systems to avoid that there is a remaining contamination present in there. Besides feed, we also have water, drinking water, and water is maybe even more important than feed, because we know that it holds true for humans, but it holds true for animals as well. We drink more than we eat. And we have to drink safe and clean water. And water is crucially important, and often sometimes because water is not that expensive, it's undervalued, and we just take it somewhere, and we do not spend enough attention to the quality of the water. So water should be checked at least twice a year, for its quality, chemical quality, but also microbiological quality. So at least twice a year, and at different locations, preferably at the source, at the entrance in the farm, and also at the last drinking nipple here, at the end of the drinking line, because this is the water the animals are really drinking, and the water should be clean and safe. And a very simple way to test this is just to take a water sample, to look at it and to ask yourself, would I drink this water? And if you as a human being says, no, I don't drink this is too dirty, I don't trust the water, I will not drink it, well, in that case, it's not safe for your animals either. So the quality of the water the animals are drinking should be of an equal quality as the quality of the water humans are drinking. So really, it is something where often a lot of work has to be done. In terms of how can you make sure that you have good water quality, well, there's plenty of treatment possibilities of the water. And again, you have to work at the source, what type of water is coming in. And often you can disinfect this water that is coming in. But it's also about the pipelines again. Here you have a cut through a pipeline, and you see this huge biofilm production in the pipelines. Well, you can be reassured that in here there is a gigantic microbiological growth, and there's also residues of medicines and or feed additives or water additives that are living in here and that are continuously released, and so the animals are exposed to it, to sometimes even antibiotics and so on. And so if you have this in your water lines, you need to clean your water lines. You need to clean them, and again, there's different products that are available, that either chemical products or also mechanical systems on high pressure systems that are available to flush your lines, and sometimes if you start flushing your lines, you'll get more or less black water coming out of here, illustrating that there is so much dirt in these lines. So you have to do that also quite regularly, especially if the ambient temperature is high, then there is a good environment for microbiological growth. So cleaning your water lines and disinfecting your water sources is important to make sure that the animals get healthy water, because through the water a lot of diseases can be spread, can be introduced into a farm, and can be spread to many different animals. This is from cattle farms, but here again you see you can simply visually see that these are dirty water sources. If you as a farmer or as an advisor on a farm, you look at it and you think, I would never drink from it, well, then there is no reason why you should have your animals drinking from it. Really, also animals, and sometimes people may think, well, whatever I give them, they drink it anyway. Yes, indeed, because they're thirsty. So that would be the same for us. If we do not have an alternative, we would also drink dirty water. But if we have an alternative, we'll surely drink the clean water. So we talked about water, we talked about feed. Let's talk about these other bugs, vermin and bird control. All these little animals that are attracted to the farms, that want to get in, that are in search of feed, in search of warmth, in search of coverage. And these rats, especially the rats, they can do huge damage. You see here they eat the isolations, they damage also the outside of the farms. They can also bite the electric lines. So very often we see that stables are in fire, so that they burn down, and often it's related to electric shortcuts because these little animals have damaged the electric lines. So quite dangerous. And even more dangerous because they are known to be transmitters of over 35 different animal diseases. So really, these little animals, they do not only eat from the feed, they spoil the feed, but they can also introduce a lot of different diseases. So that's why we do not want them on the farms. We want to keep them out as much as possible. But they are very much attracted to these farms. As I said before, you can during nighttime sometimes you can see a lot of them. Same holds true for mosquitoes. Also, mosquitoes can be a source of infection, and also mosquitoes and different flies, different types of insects, ticks also, and might bring in different diseases. So also they should be repelled, should be tried to be kept out, and otherwise be controlled by means of chemical control systems. So how do we do that? Well, the first control system to keep the rats and the mice out and the birds out is to make sure that your stables are closed. Not like this, with open invitations to fly in, to walk in, but better like this, where you have these grids that avoid the entrance of birds and avoid the entrance of rats and mice. Also avoid all this, a lot of dirt around the stables where there's a lot of sheltering places, all kinds of old material, leftovers of feeding materials, leftovers of anything you've used in the last 20 years. If you keep that alongside your stables, that's really a perfect harboring place for wild animals, for rats, for mice, where they can breed, and afterwards they walk into your stable. If the premise is clean, if there is no dirt around, then and these rats, they're very shy, they will not easily cross such an area here. So that's already your first line of defense to avoid that a lot of these rats will break in. Also, entrance of birds. Keep the stables closed. Also here with these nets, keep the nets closed so that birds do not enter the stables, because also birds can bring in diseases. If you think about poultry production, for instance, birds can be transmitters of salmonella, just to say one of these diseases. So we also try to keep those animals out. And then on the inside, we also have a job to do. We can do vermin control based on mechanical control systems, these little devices, but we also have the chemical control, the poison, different types of poisons to be used to control the animals. Both work, but ideal control is where we have the both together. Not only the mechanical, it's not good enough. The advantage of these mechanical traps is that you can see whenever you have catched an animal, and so it's a good visual inspection to see whether there is a large infestation. There's a lot of rats and mice around, so that's an advantage. The disadvantage is that it's not enough to catch them all. So that's why you need to have like a combination of these traps together with the use of poisons to control these rats in your farm. These animals, these little friends or cats and even dogs, are not an efficient rodent control program. So please do not use them as a rodent control program. In a good biosecurity, we keep all animals out. So also the cats and the dogs. Why? Well, first of all, they will only catch a few mice and rats. They won't catch them all. And secondly, even if they catch them, then the cats will be the ones transmitting the diseases from one area of the farm to another. So it's really not a good control program. A good control program is a combination of the outside prevention, mechanical traps inside, together with a chemical, with the use of poison, and in that way you can keep the infestations under control and not through introduction of cats, for instance, into your stables. If we think about cattle, that's another animal production system we have. There we also have, they go outside, even in some swine production systems, we have outdoor production, and there we have the risks of pasture contact, so that cattle will go on pasture and they could come into contact with cattle from other farms, from the neighboring farmer, and there again disease transmission is possible. So the ideal situation is where you keep the cattle on pastures that have no contact with other animals. So don't put them on a pasture where the animals from the neighboring farm are just next door. So that is, try to avoid that. And if you cannot avoid it, ideally you have a 3 meter distance between the groups. Something like this. This is really nicely done, where you really have a very good separation between the different groups to avoid that they come in close contact, and then you reduce the risk of transmission of diseases. We know from the current corona pandemic that this social distance, we call it, but that also counts for animals, to keep this distance between groups of animals to avoid the transmission of diseases. Also here, contact between different animal species and with the dog, these are things to be avoided, because different animal species can transmit diseases, and this dog is now playing with the young stock, but maybe in the afternoon he goes into the stable and he has contact with the adult animals or with the calves, and in that way the dog can be the transmitter of diseases. So please avoid this. Also contact with sheep. So keep animals separately from other animals. That's I would say a general principle. Other examples here where we this is more an Asian setting, where we see ducks and swine being bred together. This is not what we like to see. For instance, in these conditions, you have a quite important likelihood of developing a new influenza strains, influenza virus, which is occurring in birds, but it can also occur in pigs. If you bring all those animal species together and you put them quite intensively together, you have an increased risk of the development of new diseases and the spread of these diseases. Also here again, the dogs and the cattle. Dogs, for instance, are known transmitters of different parasites that can also infect the cattle. Neospora, for instance, is one of these known parasites that can be transmitted from the dog to the cattle, and in that way continues the infection cycle. Now we have the surroundings. We have the surroundings where wild animals can be attracted to, and again I refer here to these the ducks, which are known transmitters, for instance, of avian influenza, and avian influenza is transmitted through these migrating birds that come to feed, that come to rest in the close environment of other farms, the close environment of farms, where they're also often attracted by the feed, and in that way again the diseases can be introduced in your farm. So be careful with this and try to avoid that wild animals come close to your domesticated animals, to your production sites, because they can bring in diseases. In my country, for instance, the wild boars, now we're talking about, for instance, African swine fever as a disease in pigs, is transmitted by wild boars. And here at the left side, you see a graph, you see a map with all different farms. And you see we have a densely populated area with a lot of pig farms in Belgium. And if we have wild boars running around here, they can get close into, they can come into close contact with these farms, again with all the related risks. So in that setting, we would say that that we have to that we have to put fences around the stables, and not only around the stables but also around the feed storage areas where we store the feed, to avoid that these wild boars can get close to the animals, but also to avoid that these wild boars can get close to the feed storage. So yeah, those are my messages with regard to this part of the external biosecurity. So my take-home messages are that both the feed and feed transport trucks should be clean and safe. So take good care and do not only focus on the feed, but also focus on the transport trucks. Think very carefully about water, and the first step to do is to regularly check it to control the water quality. And if you are in doubt, just look at it and think for yourself, would I drink it? And if you say, I would definitely not drink this water, then there is a reason to act, because it means that it's not safe enough. Vermin and birds should be kept out, so your first control is at the outside. You try to keep them out, and then secondly, you also have to have a line of defense at the inside of your farm. If it's about cattle, you should carefully think about pasture contact and try to avoid that as much as possible, and also think about the wild animals. So wild animals, and more in different parts of the world, wild animals and animal production are coming closer and closer to each other, and so and these wild animals are often a reservoir of different diseases, known diseases, and sometimes new diseases that are coming from these wild animals and that might be introduced. So it's always important to really make a good separation between the areas where wild animals live and the domesticated animals, and to avoid that they get into close contacts. So with this, I want to thank you for your attention, and as always, I'm open for questions to be answered, and I hope you've learned something from this presentation. Thank you very much.
Your presentation is always to the point, and more importantly, the key takeaway that we need to make sure that all of us we will keep that on top of our mind. So biosecurity, but it's simple and clean. Okay. So thank you again, Professor. So now let's listen to Plamen about application of Stalosen F.
Thank you, Harry. I think you already see my screen. I have shared it. So generally, I cannot. Yeah, thank you. I cannot add much to Professor Jeroen's presentation because it was very detailed and very precise. And I will try to make some summary about, for example, farm location and layout. On my opinion, or simply you should regard the farm as a fortress where the animals should be protected from anything. For example, the most important is that if there are any similar farming units or animals around, and it should be taken into account, especially for the new building farms. The second consideration should be the distance between the farm and roadways and pathways where the animals are transported, as well as how the inlet and outlet of the condition system is positioned in the farm, because it is very important about and infecting the other farms around. Also, farm location is important regarding the landscape. Actually, it provides the natural barriers. It is very important, for example, to trim the grass around the production units in order to discard of wild animals and birds to nest there or to cross this area. Also should be on a higher ground because it will help to drain the production area well and to avoid the standing water, which is really very important for reducing the multiplication of flies and different other different animals. It is important also to have a map of the production area. As you can see here, actually it gives a better overview on production facilities as well as the transport paths of the feed trucks and also the trucks which takes out the manure or dead animals. It is very important to consider that the ways of the trucks which are carrying the feed and the other one with the waste products should not cross, which is extremely important. And also traffic flow is really very important to be shown on the map. About vermin control, actually Stalosan can help to reduce the fly population in the farm. It is known that actually, except its disinfection properties, Stalosan can also control the fly population by killing the fly larvae, and also it works to some extent as a repellent, so expelling the flies away from the production areas which are treated with Stalosan. Also, Stalosan can contribute to the external biosecurity with cleaning and disinfection procedures. As you know, actually, in cold weather, a liquid disinfectant for bull disinfection are not very effective because they can freeze during the winter. But on the other hand, actually, Stalosan can work also in a very low temperatures. So this is my presentation. It was rather short, but I hope I have given you some information about Stalosan application and overview of the external biosecurity from my point of view. Thank you. Thank you,
Plamen, for sharing your experience, your field experience view on that. So now is your time. So let's do a Q&A. I have one question, quite interesting, because very up to date, I would say, regarding wildlife trading. So I would address that question to Professor Dewulf. So whether biosecurity issues discussed can be applied to exotic or wildlife trading. Professor?
Yes, well, I think it really can. I mean, it is quite clear that indeed the principles of biosecurity are the same. It's about transmission of diseases, whatever animal species we're talking about, and it holds true for wildlife as well. And I would say when you trade wildlife, you should be even more careful because these wildlife, as I said, can often be a source of infection. They are lesser well controlled. Often they are not vaccinated and things like that. So there is a lot of risks of certain diseases in those wildlife. So the idea of quarantine, what we talked about last time, the idea of separating the wildlife from other animal species, the whole issue of cleanliness of your transport trucks and so on, holds absolutely also true for the trade of the management of wildlife.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Professor Dewulf. So let's stay together, Professor. On the slide number 1, heated, treated, and decontamination reference to Salmonella, could you elaborate on how feed could be secured against disease transmission?
Yeah, there's a lot of things, and I'm not the top specialist in this, but what I can say about it is that first of all, it starts with using safe sources. So the basis, the grains you buy, the protein sources that you are using to mix into your feed, they should be safe. That's the That's the first step. Secondly, there is some processes that can be applied during your feed production, such as heating of the sources that will, of course, decontaminate. The heat will decontaminate almost every pathogen. And then sometimes there's also like treatments with formol or other chemical components that can be added, but that is it's really variable. In some countries it's allowed, in other countries it's not allowed. So I don't know the regulations everywhere. So there's a lot of application steps that can be done. But yeah, as a consumer, as a client of you, as a farmer, you're buying feed, you really have to go into discussion with your feed producer and asking, what do you do? And they know there is a lot of applications, but as often is the case, they all have a certain cost. So if you go for the most cheapest, yeah, then sometimes you run a certain risk, of course.
Okay. Very good. So very good. So let's take the last question for Plamen. We have seen a bucket of stalosan where stalosan F can be used as a good disinfection. Plamen?
Yes, well, thank you for your question, Harry. Actually, stalosan is very effective if used in front of the farm, where the people are actually entering the farm. And also, stalosan can be used in front of each production unit. We already have a very good test made by University of Minnesota, where they have tested stalosan against a virus, and actually it was really 100% effective to kill the virus on the boots. The other advantage of stalosan comparing to the liquid disinfectant is that actually it tolerates the organic matter. So it is not necessary to clean perfectly your boots before you put them into the stalosan disinfection unit. So thank you.
Okay, very clear, Dr. Nikolov, and not to mention that stalosan is not going to be freezing, whatever the weather. Okay, so that's all for the program today. So thank you again for your time, and we hope to see you next month for a rendezvous with Nele. So Nele will be talking about external biosecurity part 3. So entrance control, how to organize a decent hygiene logs, and which step does one need to take before entering the farm premises. Okay, so thank you and see you next month.